We cover the latest topics and trends making waves across the sport and chat with our industry's most prominent leaders, so your golf business stays one step ahead. Welcome to Golf Business Live, powered by Club Caddy. Here's NGCOA CEO Jay Karen and owner of Augusta Ranch Golf Club and Vice President of the PGA of America, Don Rea.
Now, back in the day, you had some epic battles with Jack Nicklaus. Like, you were maybe the only one on tour who was not afraid of him. But who, when you would see the field for the next week or whatever, who did strike a little fear in you? Like, oh no, they're in the tournament.
Gary Player was one of the toughest competitors I've ever played against. When you see a man lining up a putt from 4, 5, 6, 9 inches, and instead of backhanding it, one-handing it, doing something. No, Gary would sit there and he'd stand up there just like old times, and I mean, that putt's that long. I said, what the hell are you doing? He'd be up there. He'd be out there with his knees knocked in. And great short game. Great bunker player. Gary, when you got with Gary coming down, Raymond Floyd was tough. Didn't come much tougher than Raymond Floyd. If Raymond Floyd, there were horses like that, as you well know. Seabiscuit was like that. If he saw another horse coming here, he'd speed up. I don't know how you train a horse to do that, but I mean, it's in there. It's here. Raymond Floyd was the same way. If he saw that, he'd birdie. I mean, he'd stare at you, and here he goes. And Jack didn't say much. I couldn't talk to Jack when I played with him because he walked too damn fast. I couldn't keep up with him. And he did it on purpose.
And that was your secret weapon?
Well, no, he did it on purpose. As soon as he hit, boy, he'd take off. Little steps, but a lot of them. Little steps.
All right, man. I'll tell you, that was a career highlight for me, was to be on stage with Lee for nearly an hour talking shop. But wait, we'll get to that in a minute. Welcome, everybody, to the February 2024 episode of Golf Business Live, coming to you here from Charleston. Thank you to our friends at Club Caddy who power this webcast for us. It's a show where we discuss happenings on the trade side of the business. Jay Karen, CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association, and the ham to my egg, Don Rea, Vice President of the PGA of America and owner of Augusta Ranch. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, X, or LinkedIn, we invite you to share your comments. And we have a staff ready and waiting to filter those comments for the great ones that we will try forwarding into our discussion. Don Rea, how the heck are you?
I'm pumped. Are you kidding me? I'm at Don Rea HQ right now. I'm at my house, although I am flying to the Carolina section to go to their big show on Monday, so I'm pumped for that. But really, how do you not come back from the PGA Merchandise Show? How do you not come back from your golf business conference and seeing Lee and talking about dynamic pricing and all the the great education that you guys have? And then I went to go see Rhett and the superintendents, and it just really made me, to be quite honest with you, I am now more focused, more solidified than ever. That when I as I finish out being vice president, become president, that it is about recreational golf, dude. Jay, it's about the superintendents. It's about the golf professors. It's about the owners. It's about the architects. It's about the builders. That is who runs recreational golf. That's the 40 million that play on and off a golf course. And that's what I've decided I'm going to grind on. It's not about the 1% of the 1% that make a living and pay their mortgages playing golf. It's about the 40 million who play it because they love it and because it's fun. So really, I've been really kind of excited about kind of passing this message on this year. I'm all fired up.
We should call this Golf Church, not Golf Business Live,
Hey, we got to do it. We just got to fill the church, right? We preach to the choir instead of getting outside in the restaurants surrounding church. That's where you go. That's where you grow the church.
You are correct. This industry is amazing. It's a $102 billion industry. And, today we have on the show, we're going to get to them in a little bit. We've got guys that are going to talk to us about merchant processing. Talking about brass taxes and blocking and tackling of owning and operating a golf course. And, a portion of that 102 billion is going to merchant processing because all those credit cards, we got to talk about that and how things have changed. So excited to bring on Harvey Silverman and Kevin McDonnell here in a little bit to talk about what's new in the credit card processing world. But glad to hear that your travels have been good. How are things? Are you got to be hitting high season now, right? I mean, so how are things in the golf, market there in the Phoenix area? Is it as robust as it has been the past few years? Is it softening? What do you see happening?
I'd say it's robust. You know what I mean? It's banging. With dynamic pricing, I'm charging some rates. But I also have my punch card, so I still think it's time sensitive people and price sensitive people. But February weather, brother, has been brutal. I mean, this is probably one of the worst Februarys. Can't wait to see what Palousa's numbers say about February weather in the Southwest, because it's got to be.
I think they reported January was terrible across the country too, weather-wise.
Getting smoked, man, and it is what it is. We've been fairly lucky after COVID that we also had good weather, so we're on a double sugar high, right? And so, Mother Nature's got something to say about that, but still, that's why I really think, like a top trace or something like that diversifies you. There's times when the golf course has been dead empty because, like, people, at my peak season, Jay, is like January 1, middle of April. I mean, dude, that's when I got to kill it. And it's the shortest days of the years, right? I mean, that's the Arizona golf economy. It's very difficult. And that first trimester, you've got to put some money in the bank because you got to survive on that money for the last 2 trimesters. But, in the past where, a rain out would happen, and if people don't play golf, they just go play cards, because they're out here as winter visitors. I get zero income. That plane takes off with nobody in it. I got to fuel it. I got to staff it, but the plane takes off either with 280 souls on it or zero. And in the past, I'd be big fat zeros, but not anymore, man. I mean, we're, a good day at Augusta Ranch might be about $10,000. That'd be a good day all across the board with top trace and everything going on. So before COVID, it was less, but now, with Top Tracer, put a couple thousand in the bank. That's better than a big fat zero. So all good, dude. I mean, when the weather's good, people playing golf. So I don't see any downtick at all other than Mother Nature giving me the business.
Good. No, that's great to hear, man. You mentioned, we showed the video of Lee Trevino at the outset here, and the Golf Business Conference was amazing. It was, we had a few hundred owner operators representing, I think, almost 1,500 golf courses in the room. It was robust conversation. We had a great Q&A with Seth, at the outset, talking about what's happening in the industry. We had Paul, our AI expert, a captivating keynote. There he is, speech on artificial intelligence in general, but then connecting the dots to the golf industry and what's already happening. It's eye-opening. And it's a little scary, but also equally exciting to see what's possible here. And so NGCOA is going to do our best to connect the dots for golf course operations on certainly the AI topic. We had our economist Anirban Basu give the update on the global economy, what's happening, just entertaining and really wonderful. It was all in all a really great show. The PGA show itself was robust as I've ever seen it. All around a great week. We had a golf leadership summit on Thursday afternoon, kind of a private affair of various leaders in the golf industry. And one of the best takeaways for me from that was a panel on environmental sustainability. It had Easterbrook on there, John Easterbrook from PGA of America, Dave Pillsbury from Invited, and Rhett Evans from GCSA talking about best management practices with regard to environmental sustainability and use of inputs. And we have to help GCSA get the word out on these best management practices, getting more owners and operators using them so we can continue to tell the good story of golf's environmental stewardship. That's a narrative we still have to flip, in this industry. There was an article in the New York Times this week that was highlighting kind of golf courses that have gone fallow and the goodness of that. A little the angle was like, wow, look how good this is, because open park, if you're not, you get it, like, open space, green parks and all of that. It's not an economic driver for sure for a community when it's just a park like that. But that's the narrative that we still have to flip is the goodness that golf does for land and water and so forth. But all in all, it was a great week. A couple other things happening before we get to our guests on the national level. A few things we want to report out on. One is this 9-hole golf course in New York that was sued, an errant golf ball case. Golfer was hit in the eye, and NGCOA stepped in within the court system and submitted an amicus brief earlier this year, and they had their day in court last month, and it's going to take a couple of months to find out what the decision is. And so we will let everybody know, because these court cases are really important in the precedent that they may set, that if someone gets hit in the eye with a golf ball on one hole from a golfer on another hole, where's the liability fall? Where's the assumption of risk when you walk on a property? Who assumes that risk? And so we're anxious to report out on the results of that case as soon as we find out. A couple of other things. One, just to remind folks that the compensation and benefits report is out, and we welcome NGCOA members to download that at no additional cost if you're a member of NGCOA. Same with the 2024 Pulse report, an amazing piece of research that Don, anybody running a business should do it in context. What's the context of what's happening in your industry, your sector, and what are the other owners and operators and merchants think about what's happening? It's all really good information. It's in this Pulse report. So be sure, if you're members of the association, to download the report. And our latest release, which just happened a few weeks ago, is our white paper on credit card processing called Deck of Cards. It's available now to NGCOA members to download. And if you're not a member, we invite you to join. These are the resources you get when you join the association. So please, we encourage you to do so. And if you came to the Golf Business Conference, the education library is up and running now. So you can head to the community tab at ngcoa.org and access the footage that we were able to capture there. Oh, and one little plug here for the new NGCOA Golf Business Swag, the store. T-Commerce is our partner. You can go to ngcoa.org and purchase your favorite NGCOA or golf business items. I love how this works. What my kid calls it drop shipping, I think, where it's just, we don't have to have the inventory. They've got Johnny O and some other great brands. And so members, if you're proud of the organization, like, you see the PGA walking around with all their seal and their logos. Well, NGCOA members, we've got it for you too as well. So Donnie, I want to see you wearing some NGCOA swag soon, wherever you go.
I am a proud member of the NGCOA, and I don't know why every PGA member in the world isn't a member of the NGCOA. I mean, why wouldn't you sign up your course to get access to some of this stuff that you guys are putting together? I think it truly is amazing. I just have to tell you one more time. I mean, obviously sitting on the board of the NGCOA was great. I saw how it worked. I saw how, just with a little bit of money, you are making tremendous impact. And those three reports you just talked about, I mean, if you're writing a budget, in a vacuum, you're sure to lose. You're sure to fail. And those things, and benchmarking, I still love what, Sagacity's doing and Pellucid's doing with the GMRC product. There's got to be some benchmarking on the utilization and average fee and things like that. But these are things that you should be doing. And the PGA's got its own education. Hey, we do a great job. But if you want a full complement of how to run a golf course, I really don't understand why you wouldn't be a member of the NGCOA. I don't know how much golf courses pay for insurance every year. Slips and falls, and you're right. Huge liability. It always freaks me out. I don't even go to Glow Ball anymore, Jay. I can't go to Glow Ball because I go out there and I just have panic attack because of all of the liability that happens when people play golf at night. But they're having fun. And now I got 3.4 million balls flying over the net. I mean, it's a wreck. But the insurance that you need is what the NGCOA provides, whether it's legislative advocacy, whether it's this education that directly pertains to the bottom line. As a PGA member, LPGA member, Club Manager of America, this is the stuff you should be reading because it's directly applicable to what EBITDA is, and better yet, even below the line, after capital, after debt, right? What's happening there? So keep doing what you're doing, man. Proud of you and the board. And it's got to be the new president, Kathy Harbin. I mean, Kathy Harbin, evidently something happened because as soon as she became president, I love Tommy. But now we got a master professional running the NGCOA. You better look out.
You do. Kathy's amazing. We had great officer elections. So Kathy's our new president for 2 years. Very proud of the work that she does. And we're a great duo. I can't wait to really get going with our agenda. I love EBITDA. I love you mentioned EBITDA. I saw something's, those Facebook ad algorithms and everything. Someone is advertising to me an EBITDA t-shirt. It's just a t-shirt that says EBITDA on them. Why? How do they target me on EBITDA? But they did, and I'm about to buy it. I'm going to wear it on the next show, because EBITDA is what it's all about. We'll talk about that later. But
I don't know about that. EBITDA is not what it's about. That's what people think. It's capital. It's not included in EBITDA. That's debt service is not included in EBITDA. I mean, a PGA golf professional I know understands EBITDA, but I got to get them more behind the scenes going, if you got a loan on your golf course, what are you, 3-4%? You got to put into capital. That's what the bank requires. So no, it's about cash, and cash is not EBITDA. Cash is all the way down. What taxes, all that stuff, brother. EBITDA is fun, but you don't get to take that to the bank just yet. Uncle Sam's in there, capital's in there, the bank's in there.
Maybe my T-shirt will say cash. At least say cash next to it.
You better step it up, man. Come on now.
Hey, by the way, so just a heads up, we've got National Golf Day coming up May 9th and 10th, I believe, in Washington, D.C. So we want to see the industry show up at Capitol Hill. We have a new Congressional Golf Caucus that is formed with, I think, at least 125 members of Congress that are now in the new Golf Caucus. We have House Resolution 3124 that we're lobbying for to get golf off that damn sin list that we've been working on for a long time. So we have made some real good progress here this past year on that front. So we look forward to showing up in Washington in force to tell our good story to our friends in Washington. So stay tuned for that information, but go ahead and mark it on your calendars, folks, because it's an important week.
I'll be there.
Industry.
I'll be there with you, Jay. I'm going to be there. I hope every PGA member in the world's there.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I love it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk credit card processing. We have some of our esteemed friends of this organization. We have Harvey Silverman, who has provided countless hours of service to our organization through excellent writing and presentation, whether it's at our conferences. He writes for Golf Business Weekly. He wrote the Beware of Barter guide, and he was the key author with Deck of Cards. He also hosts our bi-monthly Golf Business Live Tech Talk show, which covers the latest technology advancements in the golf operations field. And he recently presented at the Golf Business Conference with our other guests, a seasoned expert, seasoned with a capital S. I'm telling you, I've known Kevin now for about 8 years on the subject of credit card processing. So we'll have Kevin McDonnell here, co-founder of Claymore Payments Consulting, deep experience, and I would call the labyrinth of the merchant processing industry. Kevin and Harvey just completed again our Deck of Cards white paper, which you can find on the NGCOA website at ngcoa.org. Harvey and Kevin, welcome to Golf Business Live.
Oh, Ron? Okay, cool. Sorry, sometimes I like to reread what I wrote just to kind of.
Just to what?
Self-admiration.
Yeah, I was about to say to enjoy it again, or welcome, gentlemen. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us. So, guys, we appreciate all that you've done for the organization over the years on many fronts. Kevin, you and I have fought some battles, have some battle scars and some of the merchant processing headaches we've had in our industry. We appreciate everything you've done, Harvey. We've done a lot of work together as well. We appreciate you guys collaborating on this. So why don't we start with Harvey and, maybe give us a little introduction to this Deck of Cards publication. Let's start with, why do you think it was necessary to even publish this, right? It's just a standard, thing that everybody does in business, credit card processing, no big deal. The monthly statements come and go. Yeah, well, no big deal, right? But why did we feel together that it was important in this moment in time to publish what was happening in the golf industry?
It was important because the landscape is changing rapidly with merchant processing, and primarily because several of the golf management system companies, the GMS people, have become proprietary merchant processors, which means that in a couple of cases, courses no longer have the choice of being able to shop around and maybe find a better rate, which they always find. It's funny when and I've heard this from several people saying, hey, yeah, every time somebody else knocks on my door and they want to be my merchant processor and I give them my statement, they always beat it by 10%. It's just, and it's constant until it doesn't happen anymore, or after 1 year, it jumps back up to maybe more than it was before. So the fear that Jay expressed originally when we first started talking about this was the lack of choice that could ensue with GMS companies becoming merchant processors. But what really this became more of was just creating some education and transparency into the whole world of merchant processing. Yes, there are proprietary systems, but there are others that aren't, and trying to understand where this all sits with an individual golf course owner operator in managing his merchant processing is what became this white paper, Deck of Cards. Probably, the most as it turns out, maybe the most controversial and most important chapter in that was about surcharging.
Mm-hmm.
And that landscape has changed since we published this just a few weeks ago. And we can talk a little bit more about that, about what's happened in New York State, happening in California, and probably federally regarding not just surcharging per se, but the whole junk fee. There's a huge, umbrella over all these different junk fees that they're calling it, and surcharging is included in that. But really, this was just, there was a white paper written back in 2020, I think, by NGCOA that I reviewed. And what Deck of Cards was really not just an update on that, but in many cases, a correction of some of the things that were true in 2020 that aren't true now.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, you reminded me of kind of what stimulated some of this conversation. I want to bring Kevin into this because Kevin is he has the knowledge and the experience of a surgeon, down to the capillary level of these things. And so, Kevin, let me ask you a question. Tell me if you think my fear was unfounded that kind of started some of these conversations. One of the fears I had was as I saw the cozy relationship between a merchant processor and a software company where a golf course may not have any choice, right? Like, sorry, if you're going to use our software, you have to use this merchant processor. That was a red flag to me because I was thinking choice is good. Choice competition can keep rates reasonable. And if you don't have good rates and you're not happy about it, you may have to switch your software. You can't plug in. That was a concern. And then all of a sudden we have maybe merchant processing companies buying software companies, so not is it just a cozy relationship, it's an ownership relationship. So I'm looking at all of this starting to happen and getting worried because I represent the golf course owner. Now we're an entire ecosystem. I want everybody to be successful. Sure, it's the golf industry. Rising tide lifts all boats. But as I'm thinking for the golf courses, I'm worried about the merchant processing fees going up and up and up. And one way historically to combat that was to bring in competition. I was concerned about that. So as you've seen this ecosystem rise, and change, is my fear unfounded on this? Because, and I'll say one more thing before I want your feedback. I brought this to one of the GMS CEOs that, hey, I'm concerned about these ecosystem changes. This doesn't bode well for the industry. And he said, Jay, as long as the rates being paid by the golf courses are fair and reasonable, is this much ado about nothing? Is it, as long as it's fair, it should be no concern who owns the company, how much choice you have, as long as the rates are fair. Do you think that is a reasonable thing to say against my concern with the ecosystem? So, Kevin, you're on the stand.
Well, it should be. The rates should be fair and reasonable. But this isn't just happening in the golf industry. It's happening across all software industries. It's happening in a very major way in the food and beverage industry. I'm sure all of you are noticing that toast is pretty prevalent in the food and beverage market. They certainly are proprietary with their credit card processing. In theory, there should be a power in numbers. And if they're doing it properly, if one of these golf management systems has, 500 customers, merchants, they should be getting better pricing because they're running more people through their system. And that should be reducing the rates. The problem is it doesn't seem to be doing that. And I think we all know it's not happening because monopolies are evolving and you don't need to reduce your rates if you don't have to. So
right.
That's the real problem that's evolving. The best rates in the industry, and not our industry, in any industry, are bodegas and corner market stores because they're still running on a Casio, cash register and a standalone terminal operating on the side. Anybody can walk in there as competition and say, hey, I can find you a better deal. I can find you a better deal. The more competition, the better a deal you're always going to get. So, competition in the stifling competition in the processing business, I think is going to be problematic down the road.
Harvey, you were champing at the bit there. What do you think?
I was wondering if you asked that CEO to define fair.
All right, let's talk about that for a second. What is, okay, and this is a question maybe Kevin, we've talked about in the past before, what is a fair and good rate? What is market rate? So if a golf course is out there looking at, they add up all their revenue for the month and they look at all their fees and they figure out their net rate is 3.12 is what they're paying. If you load on all the fees that are, the net rate that they're paying, basically, when you load up all the fees that they might be paying to the merchant processing systems, what is fair and what is good? Does golf get a good shake compared to other industries when it comes to how we are rated by the merchant processing universe? Talk a little bit about that, because golf courses probably think we're low risk. Why would we have to pay higher rates than restaurants or hotels or anybody? So talk to us a little bit about the rates themselves.
Well, in general, a fair rate in a retail environment would be about 2.5%. That's all of your fees divided by your total throughput. The issue with golf is that it's a two-part model, is that we're half retail and we're also half food and, well, probably a third food and beverage. There is more fraud in food and beverage. There is more complexity in food and beverage with regard to tipping in the United States. There's some technology hurdles that need to be confronted. So you're probably talking about 2.7 to 2.8 on the food and beverage side. So you're going to see different rates based on whether it's retail or food and beverage, and it has to do with risk and the difficulty of the transaction.
Oh, wow. So is the message here to the golf industry, if anybody's paying higher than 2.5, they should be concerned, they should be bringing torches to their software companies and asking for lower rates? Or how does a golf course even get a lower rate? If a software company says, or the deal is, gosh, you're paying 2.98 net, how does a golf course in this environment even begin to approach getting a lower rate if they think and they can show proof? Look, my neighbor down the street running this restaurant is paying 2.2. I'm paying 2.9. Do something about this. Without that competition, what is a golf course to do?
Well, you can always ask your processor for what's called a rate review. And in that case, and you can provide them evidence that a competition has come in and said that I'm paying 35, 40 basis points too high. I'd like to use these guys. Please provide a rate review. And if it's in a competitive world, miraculously, your rates get reduced to roughly whatever that competing offer was. In a non-competitive world, which we're hurtling toward, your only option is to rip out your software and go with another software provider who's willing to provide you lower rates.
Is the other option, though, bringing the old brick to the counter and separating your merchant processing from your software and just reconciling at the end of the day like they used to?
That turns you into a corner store bodega, and that will always get you the best rates.
But what's Harvey, you've studied this too. What is for a golf course owner operator, what's the drawback of bifurcating, let's use that word in a different context here, bifurcating the GMS platform from the merchant processing? What's the downside of that?
Well, the biggest issue with that is assigning a difficult task to your bookkeeper or accountant every month of reconciling your transaction fee statement with your sales reports coming out of your GMS system, because there's no longer any integration. It's just a matter of efficiency to have a fully integrated merchant processing system with your GMS. It just makes life a lot easier in making sure that the money being counted is correct against what your credit card transactions are. But I'll add another point, and this was from Jeff Hogue, who was sitting in the front row when I was doing my surcharging session, and I got done, and Jeff's sitting there with his chin in his hands, and he goes, "Okay, I'm not going to surcharge anymore. It amounts to 44 cents a round." So what Jeff had done is taken his total transaction fees from last year and divided it by the number of rounds that were played, and came out to 44 cents a round. He said, "I'm just going to build that into my fees," which, when you break it down, I've heard and talked, and there's been people on Accelerate saying, "Hey, I recouped thousands and thousands of dollars by surcharging." Unfortunately, some of those people were doing it either incorrectly or illegally, but still they were touting how much money that they had recouped. And where Jeff was saying, look, it's 44 cents a round. it's not that big of a deal, and I'll just build it into my fees. I got the same response from Mike Woods at Morton Golf about what they do. They probably transact more than the entire room I had for my session.
Let me ask you this, though, Harvey. It may feel right now in 2024, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Rewind the clock to 2018, 2019, when the economics at a typical golf course were very different, and every cent counts. Now, as a business owner, every cent does count. We know this. But every business owner makes decisions on both sides of the ledger. But right now, it may feel like no big deal to give up 44 cents, or maybe let me go ahead and charge 44 cents more to, on the green fee to cover that, not worry about the surcharging or whatever it is. Do you think that's an easy thing to say right now? And if the economy turns, and while at the same time merchant processing costs continue to rise, not just the rate increases, but as more and more golfers pay by credit card, book online, more card not present transactions, which we know is a higher rate than showing the card at the counter. As those costs organically rise, the pressure to surcharge is gonna feel greater if the economy turns. So let's talk about the surcharging for a minute here, and maybe do a quick 101 on surcharging for the audience here. And what is the definition of surcharging? What is it, and what is it not, or what is it not supposed to be?
A surcharge is a fee imposed upon a total invoice that supposedly recovers the amount that the business is being charged to process that credit card transaction. There are some things that cannot be done with surcharging. For instance, you cannot surcharge a debit card. That's illegal. That's a federal law. Excuse me. You cannot surcharge an Amex transaction. That's an Amex regulation. And if they catch you doing it, you'll lose your ability to accept Amex cards. Visa has a 3% cap, while the federal cap is 4%. But if you're transacting Visa and surcharging Visa, that's a 3% cap. There is no cap on MasterCard and Discover other than the federal 4% cap. And the unfortunate thing is the technology that is in use today in golf courses cannot distinguish between one card and the other. It cannot distinguish between debit and credit, cannot distinguish between Visa and American Express. So courses that are surcharging across the board. And that's what can get them in trouble, because they're either doing it in the case of debit illegally, or in the case of Amex incorrectly. So Don
Rea's got a question for you. Hang on. Let's take Don Rea's question.
Well, I had to Google this quote from Warren Buffett. If you've been playing poker for half an hour and you still don't know who the patsy is, you're the patsy. And I'm like, and to me, if you don't read this 38-page document that these guys came up with, you're a fool. I thought you did a tremendous job of laying out the landscape, even how to read a statement. So I think that's great. So I feel like this might be an intervention a little bit. I'm not charging a surcharge, but what if I have like a water conservation fee of 3%?
A surcharge by any other name is a surcharge.
Are you really?
Yes.
So I can't, then we've got some issues in Arizona, because there are a lot of golf courses that are throwing a little surcharge on, clearly labeled on the receipt, sales tax, 3% water conservation fee. And you're saying that could be illegal.
Kevin?
I only know the credit card side. In DC, we have something called Initiative 41, which turns up on basically all the restaurants were forced to start paying minimum wage. So they charge anywhere up to 5% before taxes. Now, that's an important aspect. If you charge it before taxes, then you're paying taxes on it. It's no more than an additional SKU or another widget that you're selling. It just happens to be a widget that's sold for a percentage, not a fixed value. And I mean, I understand the credit card world, but I'm not sure if surcharges are illegal for things like water and passing along human
health insurance. I've seen health insurance, right?
Okay, yeah. But Don, I think if that's an SKU, like Kevin said, if that's a fee that's added on to your greens fee and cart fee and is a SKU in your system, that's not a surcharge.
Well, it's not an SKU. It's I can put different percentages in there on at least on Club Profit, and that's where we threw it in there. But I'll certainly research that a little bit. It looks like Golf Course Technology says I'm fine. I'm not going to jail, which is good because I don't like to commit federal crimes. I'm kind of against federal crimes, but so that's what I mean, obviously it's if they ask me, Don, are you doing that just to really do a credit card fee because it's really close to that 2.5?
Don,
I said, no, seriously.
You would charge that for cash, like if someone is paying cash.
If somebody pays cash, are you charging them that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So Harvey, I want to split the hair on this. We've talked about this offline too. Convenience fee. Okay. I share with Harvey my personal experiences in my personal life when I am using a card to pay for something. And I see, because my radar's up on this stuff, obviously, since we published this and we're involved in these issues, when I see a convenience fee charged, if I'm going to use credit card, they call it a convenience fee. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. How can you get away with charging a 4%, whatever is convenience fee? How is that different than a surcharge?
The difference is a convenience fee is when using a credit card is a option to the normal way of payment. So in the case of like private clubs, which is a good example, where the normal way of payment is a check or an ACH transaction, or maybe even cash. And then the club says, hey, we've just now opened a new portal for you to be able to pay your monthly dues by credit card, but we're going to charge you a convenience fee for that. That's legal. That's fine because it's an option other than the normal way of payment. So the example
who defines normal, right? Because Don could say, hey, everybody, my normal payment I've decided is cash. So anything other than cash, I'm putting 5% on and calling it a convenience fee because it's a convenience to everybody here to pay by credit card. How is that different than surcharging? I still don't understand that.
Well, Don's already crossed that line, so he can't go back and say, okay, we're now just going to be a cash business and charge you a fee for credit card. So he's already crossed that line. But another example is, paying your mortgage. Typically, that's paid by a check or an ACH payment. And then the bank says, well, now you can pay by credit card. That's an option for you, but there's a convenience fee attached to it because we've always had these other payment methods that have been standardized. Maybe it's not normal. Maybe standardized is a better word to use. And now as an option, we're offering credit card, but there's going to be a convenience fee added to that. So that's how all that gets defined. And it's a little bit murky, just like surcharging is a little bit murky, but there's no legal definition to it in the credit card processing world. There's just a description saying convenience fee is different than surcharging, and here's why.
Mm-hmm. So, Kevin, let me ask you this. Boy, you can split hairs on this so much. Like if I show up at a golf course and I'm paying with a debit card, isn't there a way to actually swipe that or enter the debit card as a credit card transaction? It's where it's, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not giving a PIN. It's a swiping it, or they're entering the number, or whatever it might be. So if you're running it on the credit card system, not on the debit PIN system, is that okay charging is it okay for merchant to charge the surcharge if it's not actually being, a PIN transaction?
That's an interesting question. And the answer is no. It's still a debit card, regardless of how you unravel it. The reality there, and it's usually, large inline stores, it's just people who are paranoid about using their PIN in a public place. So they choose to run their debit card as a credit card, which actually incurs a much higher fee to the retailer, but it gets them out of having to present a PIN. It's also the way criminals always tend to go to Best Buy, especially if they find somebody's debit card lying on the parade route here in New Orleans, like mine probably is. They'll go to a Best Buy and just hit, not debit, even though it's a debit. I'd rather run it as a credit card. Then they don't need the PIN and they can get away with the transaction. It's a way of circumventing the PIN debit transaction. But in a technical sense, what happens when it's that PIN, when you put the PIN in, the transaction turns into an ATM transaction. It's no different than you go into an ATM machine, and it's a much more secure transaction because that particular transaction is riding on the same rails as the ATM transactions. So it's really a protective measure for both the cardholder and the retailer, but it can be circumvented, and that it's provided as a convenience. I'm not sure why, but I think it's because some people are just nervous, especially gas stations. People don't like to put their PIN in a gas station because they think that there's a lot of theft there. But at the end of the day, the numbers, the 16 digits on the card determine what the card is, and that card is and always will be a debit card.
Interesting.
So the only option, Jay, really and sadly, is having your staff take the card and then determine whether it's a debit or an Amex, and say, okay, this is a debit, so I will not surcharge you and run the transaction through, or a Visa, hey, I can only do 3% on this. And that's just, it's inconvenient, it's inefficient, it's going to slow down the whole check-in process. It just doesn't happen. You can't expect your staff to do that and do it correctly every time they're checking in a golfer. So
what are they teaching people at PGA school?
Hey, easy fella. I was just going to give you a big compliment because nobody knows how much you've been doing. I've known you for a long time. Like, there should be a trophy about you of what you've done for the whole entire golf industry. We're not going to bring that up today, but everybody should know you're a hero, brother. You really are. But no, and I think this is interesting what you say about this, because you're right. We're not talking about it. There's no educational classes of surcharges. That's why I just love and dig what the NGCOA is doing. I'm telling you, that 38 pages you guys came up with on Tech of Cards is no joke. I mean, you should get PDRs at the PGA of America for just going through that. We should actually create, no joke, why don't we create a little test? Because that'll get PDRs. If you guys created a little 10-question, whatever, I'll find out what it is. I would love to put that on 5 things to know of the PGA of America and say, hey, I can figure out the back end there, because I think this is one of those cool things that if a PGA member knows this and then tells their owner, who's not a member of the NGCOA, hey, I just read this, kind of interesting. When's the last time the controller took a look at the credit card fees? All of a sudden, the PGA member is like, all right, I got the owner's back, because that's who we are. We've got everybody's back. So I think we should do something. You're onto something, Kevin. Let's make it some PDR requirements.
That's great. I want to surface a question from Kurt Albertson real quick. He says, how about a convenience fee out on the golf course with the beverage cart? There is a change to the operation by having to bring in special hardware where they normally don't have it. So that, in this case, credit cards is a difficult thing. And it is a convenience to offer this. So do you think that would pass the sniff test of being able to charge a convenience fee if it's out on the golf course from the beverage cart?
that's a tough thing.
Everything is the COVID changed everything. So I'm saying yes, because so many barriers. I don't think the original intent, it would have fallen under that category, but COVID literally changed everything when it comes to how credit cards accepted, where you can charge credit card fees, and that's kind of caused the explosion of surcharging, directly to card holding merchants. I do agree that on the golf course, there is a significant amount of technology required to do that transaction properly and without fraud. The worst case scenario is, I've seen golf courses where they take a picture of, the cart person takes a picture of the card, gives you the stuff, and then goes and runs a transaction back at the bar. That, I'd rather pay an extra 3% to know that transaction is happening appropriately, at the point of sale.
And not to mention, they'd have to have the appropriate signage on the beverage card as well.
Let's talk about that. I want to talk about notice, the proper notice that you have to give as a merchant when you are surcharging. I know there's a law that's changed, or either changed or changing in the state of New York. Talk to us, Harvey, about what you're learning, because I'm going to ultimately get to the question of, and I know where you side on this, should courses surcharge or not, right? I mean, NGCOA is not going to say you should or not. We're just providing this information, but providing upfront knowledge that we surcharge, and here's how much we surcharge and what kinds of transactions. What is law saying about that right now, Harvey?
The law says that you have to have signage at every point of entry to your business and at every place where a transaction can happen. So that would be at your golf shop counter, at the bar, in the restaurant, on the beverage cart. All those places where a transaction can take place has to have signage indicating what the surcharge is and how much. So it's, in cases of, I've been to places, like a Morton Golf that has their superstore and their golf shop. And then in the golf shop is the shoe store. And then they have their restaurant and they have their range. All those places would have to have the appropriate signage that a surcharge is taking place on a person who's using a credit card for the transaction.
Not just at the register? Like, why would you have to post all? I can't imagine.
At every place where a transaction can take place.
Okay.
So whether if for instance, if the range machine takes credit cards and that's being surcharged as part of that transaction, there's got to be a sign there. A transaction is taking place there.
Where do you see that?
Also, and also online. It's got to be on your online store.
Don?
Can I pivot just for a second? Because I see Matt Welliver, if you want to show that, Taylor.
Yeah.
Because this is interesting to me. I didn't see you cover this. In your 38 pages, you didn't cover too much about chargebacks. I've got a lot of older people play Augusta Ranch, and they absolutely paid that day. This is what happens. They pay their green fee, and then they pay their buddy's green fee because their buddy's behind them, and he tries to be nice. Now it looks like a duplicate transaction because they're back to back. His wife does the statement, so then she calls Augusta Ranch and said, "You duplicated these charges." So then she initiates a chargeback. I've never won a chargeback in my life, and I've tried, especially American Express. You just don't win, and once these people game the system by charging everything back, and I can't prove the signature, right? It was always problematic, Kevin and Harvey. And I just wonder what Matt's saying there. Would that give me a little bit if I've got a POS GMS provider who's actually going to help me with chargebacks so that I don't get gamed by some of these people who like to charge everything back because maybe they didn't like the greens or something? I don't know. Is there something there? Do I get more customer service on a chargeback situation, Kevin?
Yes, I'm looking at Matt's question down below. Matt is correct. And that was Matt's question is how I found my way into the golf industry. And that was, as you know, with Club Profit, that they were outsourcing to he who shall not be named. And the reality is customer service is 80% of the issues that came in for the GMS guys were credit card related. And it is difficult. You're basically handing a trouble ticket off to whoever the processor is, and you're lost. You don't know when that trouble ticket has been resolved. So it is much better for the GMS to be on the front line to accept the first service call because it is more than likely related to a credit card situation. And so they at least have the back channel connectivity now that they are providers providing the POS services themselves. They can be the frontline defense. So it's about reporting and it's about first line defense for customer service.
And that is explained in Deck of Cards. That's one of the advantages that we cited in Deck of Cards of having a proprietary GMS system. So Matt, I certainly agree with you. I think besides efficiency, another GMS provider that's proprietary had told me, he said, look, before all these millions of dollars were being channeled off to a third party, now they're all staying in-house. So we can not only use this money to improve our software, but update our service. And if there is a problem between the credit card transaction process and the GMS, it's one phone call. We handle it. We solve it. It's done. That
is a benefit to that, certainly. And I want to make sure that it's clear the GMS companies aren't the bad guys here. This is just the way this is the way the ecosystem has evolved, right? So, but it does remain to be seen if that money does get reinvested, right, into the product and the service and all of that. I'm sure some will, and others it's a profitable opportunity as well.
And keeping their software fees low, which again is a subjective situation.
There have been some software companies in our space that have proposed the idea of not charging anything for the software as long as they get the merchant processing, because they know that is where the higher revenue opportunity can be.
Well, and that's okay as long as there's a cap. In other words, if their software price is $500 and they say, well, look, we'll just give you the software free and we'll just take the processing fees. Great. But that cap should be $500, probably 10% more than $500 a month, because they're carrying some risk. So I'll give them that. But for them to just arbitrarily say, we'll keep all the fees, which could be thousands and thousands of dollars a year more than the, $500, $6,000 a year you pay for the software, there has to be a cap on that. Yeah. Otherwise, you're overpaying for the software.
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions that have surfaced about the signage stuff. And I know this is, it's not standardized, right? So, and I want to, as far as state by state and all of that, I want to bring some of these questions forward and then move on from the signage question. But Jason Pearsall, who has Club Caddy, says, for signage, can an operator just print a label indicating the fee and put it on their tablet or portable processing device? This is the question of, do you discover, to me, this is a question of, do you discover the surcharge at the time of processing? Oh, before I pay, I see there's a surcharge here and they've let me know that. Or is it the time of ordering something or making a decision to buy or not buy? Where is the requirement, or what's the best practice there? And I want to surface another question from Craig Kessler out in California, I think, to Harvey. Is the requirement that the fees be advertised notice at every point where such fees are charged apply per federal legislation regulation, or is this something that differs by state on the posting requirements? That's for you, Harvey.
It's not a federal regulation, I believe.
It's a Visa MasterCard regulation. So that makes it national.
Okay.
And then states can do their own. Many states have tightened it up and made them stronger. And instead of it just being on the front of the building walking in, it has to be at the point of sale. It has to be on your menu. It has to be on your receipt. That is state by state, but there is Visa MasterCard has it as a rule, so that covers the whole country.
Right. Now, maybe you could go to ChatGPT and ask it to write you a surcharging notice that you could print it. It would write it out for you, and you print it out and you tape it to wherever and use AI for that.
That's a good idea. Don, do you have your hand up?
Well, I don't want to pivot too much on this, but in my mind, where's the future? Like Venmo, Zelle. I mean, I don't see any charges on Venmo, and that's just hitting my account. And there's a lot of activity on that. What if on Top Tracer I said you got to have a Venmo account, and I just kicked all the money to Venmo? I'm still going to pay taxes on it. I'm still going to report it. I'm still going to pay sales tax. Don't want another federal crime on Don Rea today.
But you're not paying a merchant processing fee on that, is what you're saying.
I pay. It's a Venmo, dude. I mean, so I don't. What if Venmo's an option? I have an Augusta Ranch Venmo account.
I mean, I want to save that question for the very.
All right, you can save it. I didn't want to get too
it's a good one because
my mind is grinding right now.
My last question of the show is going to be future oriented, so I want you guys to think about that for a second. But Harvey, I want to close the conversation on surcharging and signage. I mean, there's a lot of management that has to be done if you're going to surcharge. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff you got to do, right? And so, so this anonymous LinkedIn user, maybe they weren't logged in, says, with all the nickel and diming consumers face in the marketplace, fees and signage, reduced spending, you end up losing it on the back end as a business owner. Tread lightly in this space. How do you feel right now? I know you personally kind of said, I think your stance is just don't surcharge right now. Are you saying that until all of this gets settled, or are you saying it's bad business practice?
Well, let's take this another step because of what's happened this past Sunday in New York State, and will happen in California as of July 1st, and possibly federally as well. Their FTC is working on this regulation. It's about transparency. And where the consumer groups for years, and it's not just surcharging, it's junk fees. It's, this big grouping of, baggage fees and how much you're going to pay for a seat, and fees that StubHub charges you and things like that. Those are all considered junk fees. Surcharging is included in that. And what's happened is the consumer groups have tried to get junk fees banned altogether legally and have failed to do so. So they've maneuvered around that and said, okay, instead of that, we want to create transparency so that every business that is surcharging, for instance, will have to show two prices for every item, a cash price and a credit card price. So in the case of a golf course that's showing their rates online on their booking engine, you'd have to show two prices for that. Here's the price you'll pay if you pay cash at the golf shop. Here's the price you'll pay if you pay with a credit card. That's going to make it, first of all, the GMS providers that I surveyed, none of them can do that right now. So and in fact, one of them said, we're calling all of our courses, all of our clients in New York State and telling them, if you're surcharging, stop, because we can't help you do it properly. So if this proliferates across the country, it's going to make it that much more difficult for businesses to surcharge properly. For instance, if you've got a menu in a restaurant, they're going to have to show two prices. If you've got up on your board behind your snack bar, a $5 hot dog, you're going to have to say $5 cash for a hot dog or $5.15 if you have a 3% surcharge. It's just going to make it that much more difficult to do that. That's what these transparency laws, that's what these consumer groups have achieved. It took effect this past Sunday in New York State, and it's inevitable that it will move across the country.
This is where Harvey and I differ a little bit on surcharging. I mean, it's surcharging, and let's be very specific about credit card surcharging. Should businesses really be paying for people's airline miles and cash back and things of that nature? I mean, that's not a junk fee. That is something that is benefiting the cardholder that you're paying for out of your pocket. My theory is you don't have to recoup all of it. You don't have to recoup all of your processing fees, your fees, your full 3%. Why not 1.5%? Whatever the add-on, the reward miles for airplane miles, the cash back with certain, cards that advertise during the Super Bowl, things of that nature. I would be pretty irritated as a business owner to be paying for someone's miles.
Yeah, certainly.
And that's why it exists. I mean, that's why, legally surcharging on a federal level is defined in the, Dodd-Frank Durbin Amendment. So it is legal. It's just very difficult now that states are getting in and making their own, adjustments to the federal law, as is true with every other federal law. Mm-hmm. So, it does unfortunately end up coming down to what state you live in, and they're the ones who are going to come after you. I've yet to see the feds come after anybody for surcharging. I have seen it on the state level.
So no, that was going to be one of my questions before I maybe ask the last question is, who are the police on this? So if you are a golf course in the middle of Illinois somewhere and you're charging 4.5%, and you're calling it a surcharge, so it's, higher than what MasterCard says you can do, is higher that you're profiting from it a little bit, you're not doing it properly, right? Who are the police? Who's going to knock on the door and say, besides maybe MasterCard, if they pick up on it, maybe they have some visibility, but then again, are they going after everybody? Who are the police on this? You're not saying if the police are weak or there's not a weak policing system, then go ahead and do it. I'm just saying, who would call and knock on your door? So you got to do it. You're going to go to jail if you don't do it this way.
Well, the police are the consumers. And it only takes one to complain to the credit card network, MasterCard, Visa, Amex, whoever card they're using.
Fair enough.
That they've been surcharged illegally or improperly, or, in the case, it could become a class action if it's a member club, and the members get together and complain about it, and they take it to their Consumer Affairs Division of the State Attorney General, who might want to do something with it. But really, it's about the consumer. The first line of offense, making the complaint.
Good point. Now they're the ones who turn you into the police, but who are the police?
It's Visa and MasterCard. They do have enforcement divisions within both companies, and they will send plainclothes people into your business. If they've gotten enough complaints from a certain facility, they'll send a plainclothes person in. and see if what other people are claiming happens during their transaction, and then they'll cause you problems. They can put you on what's called a match list as a business, and if you're on the match list, you can never accept Visa or MasterCard or anything again. And then you've got to be hopeful that Venmo starts to crack into the business. And they do have people, and on a national level, it will happen. But at the end of the day, they're protecting the card holder. So to Harvey's point, it's going to require more than one consumer complaining about a certain business to get them to act.
All right, let's close out our discussion with a future-oriented question, and I'll start with Don. Actually, Don, I don't know what your merchant processing costs are when you aggregate it all together over the course of the year. Let's say it's $30,000 a year you're spending on merchant processing. 5 years from now, that could be $50,000 a year. 10 years from now, that could be $80,000 a year, or $90,000 a year. How concerned are you, or do you see golf course owners and operators looking at that cost and figuring out a different way of business? Or are we all just kind of subject to what's happening out there, and we're kind of weak victims of whatever happens in this ecosystem?
Well, I do think it's interesting. When you're a golf course owner, you're looking to save every and all money. I mean, if I could save 0.5% on $4 or $5 million gross revenue at Augusta Ranch, I mean, that sends Katie to college and Don and Karen to Hawaii, right? So I think I'm all in on that one. I don't know where Venmo's at. I just tried to, I just went on Venmo right now to kind of look at the tax rules, and they're going to 1099 you and send you how much money went through there. So I'm sure there's other issues there. I would, I saw that from Jason. And I get that, but like all my Venmo money is going straight back and forth through ACH through my account. I would throw this, Harvey, I just looked up, Gallus has the Gallus wallet. Sagacity's got Golf Cash. Right now when I measure my least expensive tender option, it's Golf Cash. And that brings a whole other breakage issue into it. And I know that's a whole nother show. But I can tell you, even when I give somebody an additional $20, if they put $200 on Golf Cash, the breakage that I'm seeing on that, when I subtract out what I'm giving Sagacity for all this, is did I lose you guys?
No, we're here.
Here. All of a sudden I clicked over. My daughter's trying to FaceTime me right now, messing up the podcast. I told her I'd be off at noon. She's very precise. But that's interesting to me too. I think Starbucks has obviously proven a lot of money hanging in the bank here, whether it's breakage or not, it's still your money. You're sitting on it on your balance sheet. But I think the Gallus wallet's interesting to me. Sagacity Golf Cash is interesting to me. And I think you just got to measure how much do payment processing costs. Whatever that tender option is really, because you could argue there's a cost to cash. Someone's got to take it to the bank and deposit it, right? There's some danger in that. So overall, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But, I won't say anything after this other than you have to read this document. I thought what you guys did, these 38 pages is must reading. Help anybody who watches the show certainly opens up that document.
Thanks, John. Harvey, you chime in, and then I'm going to finish with a question with Kevin.
Yeah, let me add one more thing about surcharging. More and more people are paying with this iPhone or Google Pay, either one. You cannot surcharge that transaction because you don't know the card that's being used in the phone. You don't know if it's a debit card or an Amex or a Visa. You can't surcharge a transaction with somebody paying by their phone because you don't know what card it is. So that's another element that we talked about in Deck of Cards that makes it that much more difficult, if not impossible, to levy surcharges on customers because you can't do it on this.
Yeah. I mean, you're pointing to the fact it's still the wild freaking West out there on this topic. And so, Kevin, I'm going to finish with you. Your dad was a pioneer in this industry in electronic, processing. You've been in the golf industry for many, many years now, kind of witnessing and being involved. And where do you see this in 10 years from now as an industry, or what do you see coming around the corner in this whole payments industry that, oh man, golf, you better be ready for this. What are you seeing? Put your crystal ball in front of you.
Well, I think all software manufacturers are going to end up becoming bank card processors as well, on every level in every industry. That's what all the venture capitalists are doing right now is paying these guys exorbitant multiples just to get into into whatever vertical they have control over. It's a very sticky situation. I mean, it's once you train your staff and have everybody, involved, that you could pay up to $40,000-$50,000 to install your software and buy all the equipment. They know that you're unlikely to rip all of that out just to reduce your credit card fees. I would like there to be options, and I think there will be. I think some GMSs, in order to get market share, are probably going to provide multiple options and try and break up the logjam. But if it turns into a logjam, the Fed can get involved. If they feel like there's price fixing across the board, this is what has happened in the past in my industry. Is that and starting with the telecom industry, is when monopolies start to exist, they behave in inappropriate ways, and it usually requires the state government to file a suit, and then the feds. So let's hope they behave properly, but it's a brave new world right now.
Well, that's why we need associations talking about this stuff, bringing it to light, having conversations about it so that everybody's held accountable, and we're above board and doing the right thing. I'm not opposed to anybody being clever and entrepreneurial with their businesses, no question. But, things have to pass the sniff test. Is it right? Is it good? Is it healthy? Right. And that's what this organization's about. Don, you mentioned breakage. I think that is going to be a future Golf Business Live conversation, is how to define breakage with gift cards and the escheatment laws and unclaimed property. I think that's a hot topic for us to talk about down the road. So stay tuned on that one. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the February 2024 Golf Business Live episode. We appreciate you, and members and watchers and listeners, stay tuned for more on this topic, because as Harvey brought up, it's changing every single week. So gentlemen, thank you. And we'll see everybody next month. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Jay. Take care, everybody.
Over now.